Discovery in the deep. The quantum sensors aboard the research vessel Horizon hummed softly as Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the readings for the third time. After 15 years of deep space exploration, she had learned to trust her instincts, and something about these energy signatures felt different. "Captain Voss," she called out, her voice steady despite her growing excitement. "I need you to see this." The Horizon's captain, a veteran of the United Earth Space Force, made his way to her station. His weathered face reflected the soft blue glow of the holographic displays. "What have you found, Doctor?" "These readings." Sarah highlighted a cluster of data points floating in the projection. "They're coming from within the Carina Nebula's core. The energy pattern, it's artificial." Captain Voss frowned. The Carina Nebula had been declared off-limits by the Galactic Council centuries ago, classified as a natural preserve. "Are you certain?" "The Council's initial surveys found nothing of significance here." "The Council's surveys were wrong." Sarah's fingers danced across the interface, expanding the data field. "Look at these harmonic resonances. They're perfectly aligned. Nature doesn't work that way." Before Voss could respond, a new voice joined the conversation. "Quite impressive for a species that only achieved FTL travel 3 centuries ago." Sarah turned to face Zardith, the Horizon's assigned Galactic Council observer. The tall crystalline being shifted colors slightly, a sign of skepticism in their species. "The Council's assessment of humanity's technological progress has always been generous." Sarah had grown used to the Council's condescension over the years. Humanity might be newcomers to the galactic stage, but they had earned their place through innovation and determination. "Whether you believe we're capable of recognizing advanced technology or not, these readings are real." Captain Voss studied the data for a moment longer before making his decision. "Plot a course into the nebula." Standard research protocols. "Captain," Zareth's crystalline form pulsed with warning colors. "The nebula is a protected zone. Any unauthorized entry is permitted under Section 7 of the Scientific Discovery Accord." Sarah interrupted, pulling up the relevant documentation. "When evidence of artificial structures is detected in protected zones, research vessels are granted temporary access for investigation." The Council observer's colors shifted to a deeper hue. Frustration. "Very well. But I must insist on maintaining continuous contact with Council monitoring stations." As the Horizon carefully navigated through the nebula's outer layers, Sarah's sensors began picking up more details. Whatever lay at the heart of these energy signatures was massive, far larger than any known ancient artifact discovered to date. "Structure coming into visual range," announced Lieutenant Park from the navigation station, putting it on main display. The bridge crew fell silent as the image materialized. Through the swirling gases of the nebula, a vast construction emerged. It was clearly artificial, yet possessed an organic quality to its design. Sweeping curves of dark metal stretched for kilometers, forming what appeared to be a massive facility of some kind. "My God," whispered Captain Voss. "How long has this been here?" Sarah's instruments were already analyzing the structure's composition. Initial dating puts it at, "This can't be right." She double-checked the readings. "The outer hull materials are at least 50,000 years old." "Impossible," Zareth declared. "No known civilization possessed this level of engineering capability at that time. The oldest confirmed spacefaring species only achieved interstellar travel 30,000 years ago." But Sarah wasn't listening anymore. Her attention was fixed on a new set of readings emerging from her instruments. "Captain, I'm detecting internal power signatures. Whatever this facility is, it's still operational." "After 50,000 years?" Lieutenant Park asked incredulously. "Not just operational," Sarah corrected, her excitement building. "It's activating. The energy signatures are getting stronger." Suddenly, a beam of light erupted from the facility, scanning the horizon from bow to stern. Before anyone could react, a voice filled the bridge, not through the ship's communication systems, but seemingly from the air itself. "Human genetic markers detected." initiating primary protocols. The facility began to transform before their eyes, sections of its hull shifting and realigning like a massive puzzle solving itself. As the structure reconfigured, familiar patterns began to emerge in its architecture, patterns that Sarah had seen before in humanity's oldest archaeological records. "That's impossible," she breathed, recognizing the geometric sequences that had been found carved into ancient Earth monuments. "Those are human designs." "What exactly are you implying, Doctor?" Zareth demanded, their crystalline form now pulsing with rapid color changes. "I'm not implying anything," Sarah replied, her voice filled with wonder as more data poured in. "I'm stating a fact. This facility wasn't built by any known ancient civilization. It was built by humans, 50,000 years ago." As if in response to her words, more lights began activating across the massive structure, and new data streams filled her console. They had just stumbled upon something that would rewrite not just human history, but the history of the entire galaxy. And deep within the facility, systems that had waited 50 millennia began preparing to reveal humanity's forgotten legacy, and the reason it had been hidden away for so long. The signal awakens. The next 12 hours aboard the Horizon were a blur of activity as Sarah's research team worked to decode the massive data streams now pouring from the ancient facility. Captain Voss had declared a Level 1 research protocol, allowing them unrestricted access to the ship's quantum computing array despite Zareth's increasingly vocal protests. "These energy readings are exceeding safety parameters," the Council observer warned, their crystalline form now a constant swirl of cautionary colors. "The facility's power output has increased by 300% since initial contact." Sarah barely heard them, her attention fixed on the holographic displays surrounding her workstation. The data was unlike anything she'd ever seen, yet somehow familiar, as if she were reading a language she'd forgotten she knew. "Dr. Chen," called out Dr. Patel, one of her junior researchers. "You need to see this. We've managed to decode some of the facility's basic identification protocols." The decoded text scrolled across their screens. "Gateway Station ALPJ, Human Defensive Perimeter. Authorized personnel only." "A defensive perimeter?" Captain Voss asked, leaning over Sarah's shoulder. "Defending against what?" Before she could respond, a new alert flashed across her console. The facility's external sensors had detected something, multiple somethings, approaching at FTL speeds. The Horizon's own systems confirmed the readings. 6 Galactic Council warships had just dropped out of hyperspace at the nebula's edge. "The Council is demanding we withdraw immediately," Lieutenant Park announced from communications. "They're citing emergency containment protocols." Zareth's colors shifted to a smug purple. "The Council has maintained these restrictions for good reason, Doctor. Some discoveries are better left unmade." But Sarah wasn't listening anymore. The facility's data stream had changed, responding to the Council ship's arrival. New information was flooding her screens, and what she saw made her blood run cold. "Captain," she said, her voice tight with urgency, "we can't leave. The facility. It's not just a research station. It's a warning system. And it's telling us we're almost out of time." The holographic displays shifted, showing a vast map of the galaxy. Red markers began appearing, spreading like a virus across the stars. Each point represented a detection of something the facility called void signatures, tears in the fabric of space-time itself. According to these records, Sarah continued, her fingers flying over the controls, humanity didn't just achieve spacefaring capability 50,000 years ago. We built this facility, and others like it, as an early warning network. Something was coming, something that threatened not just humanity, but all life in the galaxy. Captain Voss's expression hardened. "And you believe this threat is returning?" "The data is clear. These void signatures, they're identical to the ones that appeared before the fall of the ancient human civilization, and they're appearing again now, all across the galaxy." Suddenly, the facility's voice filled the bridge again. Critical mass achieved. Emergency protocols initiated, beginning full activation sequence. The massive structure shuddered, and new sections began to emerge from its hull. What they had thought was a research facility was transforming before their eyes into something else entirely. A vast defensive installation bristling with weapons technology, far beyond anything currently known to exist. By the first light, Zar-Ith whispered, their crystalline form paling to an ashen gray. Those weapon systems, they're quantum phase disruptors. The theoretical designs alone are considered too dangerous for any civilization to possess. They're not theoretical, Sarah replied, reading the facility's weapons data. They're functional. And according to these records, they're the only weapons ever proven effective against what's coming. The Council warships were now broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding immediate compliance with evacuation orders. But the facility had other plans. A new message appeared on Sarah's screen, this one accompanied by a DNA authentication request. ATTNTYON human INNHEORITORS. Gateway network detecting critical void incursion levels. Time to full breach. 60 standard days. Emergency authorization required to initiate Archive Protocol 7. What's Archive Protocol 7? Captain Voss asked. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the facility's response. It's everything, Captain. The complete technological and historical archives of human civilization from 50,000 years ago. Our ancestors didn't just leave us weapons. They left us their knowledge, their technology, their history, everything we'd need to fight what's coming. And what exactly is coming, Doctor? Zar-Ith demanded. Sarah pulled up the facility's historical records, and the blood drained from her face. Something that exists in the spaces between reality. Something that doesn't just destroy civilizations. It erases them from existence itself. Our ancestors called it the void. And according to these readings, it's already here. As if to punctuate her words, new alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Far beyond the nebula's edge, at the very limits of the facility's detection range, space itself was beginning to tear apart. The time of hiding was over. Humanity's forgotten legacy had awakened, and with it, the very threat it was built to fight. The only question now was whether the children of Earth would be ready to face the challenge their ancestors couldn't overcome. Breaking point. The emergency summit of the Galactic Council was in chaos. Representatives from 200 species argued across the Grand Chamber, while holographic displays showed the rapidly spreading network of ancient human facilities activating across the galaxy. Each new activation sent ripples of panic through the assembled delegates. Sarah stood at the center of the storm, her holographic projection flickering slightly as she addressed the council from the Horizon's bridge. Behind her, the massive form of Gateway Station Alpha hung in space, its weapons arrays now fully deployed. The void signatures are expanding exponentially, she reported, bringing up the latest sensor data. We've detected tiers in reality appearing in 17 different sectors. The threat our ancestors faced is returning, and we need to prepare. This is absurd, declared High Counselor Vexnar, his scaled crest flaring with anger. Humanity barely managed spaceflight 3 centuries ago. These facilities cannot be of human origin. They must be the work of the precursors. The precursors are a myth, Sarah countered. But humanity's ancient civilization was real. The genetic keys encoded in these facilities prove it. They respond only to human DNA because our ancestors built them. Then you admit these weapons are under human control, another counselor called out. The same humans who have barely earned associate status in this council would now have us believe they control the most powerful weapons ever discovered. Captain Voss stepped forward, his hologram joining Sarah's. We don't want to control these weapons. We want to use them to protect everyone. The void entities our ancestors fought don't discriminate between species. The chamber erupted in fresh arguments. Sarah could see the fear in their eyes, hear it in their voices. The council had maintained order in the galaxy for 30,000 years, by carefully controlling the development and distribution of advanced technology. Now they faced a species they had dismissed as primitives possessing weapons that could reshape reality itself. The Council cannot allow this, High Counselor Vexnar declared. These facilities must be contained until proper authorities can assume control. Suddenly, new alarms blared through the chamber. The holographic displays shifted to show a massive void tear forming at the edge of populated space. The tear was different from the others, larger, more stable, and emanating energy signatures that made the facility's sensors scream in warning. "By the void," Sarah whispered, reading the data. "It's a full breach. They're coming through." The council chamber fell silent as the void tear expanded. Something massive began to emerge, a shape that seemed to bend and twist reality around it. The facility's historical archives flashed warning after warning. This was no scout or probe. This was a full invasion force. "The facilities are responding," Sarah announced, watching as Gateway Station Alpha and its sister installations began powering up their main weapon systems. They were built as a defensive network. "They're trying to contain the breach." "Stop them," Vexnar demanded. "You cannot activate weapons of that magnitude without council authorization." "We don't control them," Captain Voss shot back. "The facilities are automated. They're doing what they were built to do: protect this galaxy." The void entity fully emerged, its form defying description. Where it passed, space itself seemed to unravel. 3 council monitoring stations simply ceased to exist as the entity brushed past them, not destroyed, but erased from reality as if they had never been. "The facilities are firing," Sarah reported, her voice tight with tension. Beams of impossible energy lanced out from Gateway Station Alpha and 2 other activated facilities, converging on the void entity. For a moment, reality itself seemed to bend around the point of impact. The entity recoiled, its form distorting as the quantum phase disruptors tore into it. But it wasn't enough. The entity recovered, and the sensors detected more void tears forming. The defensive network was incomplete. Too many facilities remained dormant, waiting for human crews to activate them. "Now you see," Sarah addressed the council, her voice cutting through their shocked silence. "This is what our ancestors faced. This is why they built these weapons. And this is why we need your help." She brought up new data from the facility's archives. "The weapons work, but the network needs to be fully activated. We need crews for all the facilities. Our ancestors left detailed instructions for human operators, but we don't have enough trained personnel to staff even a fraction of the network." "And what would you have us do?" Vexnar asked, his earlier arrogance replaced by something closer to fear. "Help us," Captain Voss replied simply. "Help us train our people. Help us understand these weapons. The void entities don't care about species or politics. Either we stand together, or we fall separately." The chamber was silent as the council watched the battle raging at the galaxy's edge. The activated facilities were holding the void entity at bay, but more tiers were forming. They had weeks at most before a full-scale invasion began. Sarah looked at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization and took a deep breath. Our ancestors faced this enemy alone, and they fell. But they made sure we would have the tools to fight back when the void returned. Now we have a choice. We can work together and face this threat as allies, or we can let old prejudices doom us all. The council chamber erupted in urgent discussions as the reality of their situation sank in. The time for denial was over. Humanity's forgotten legacy had returned not just to haunt them, but to offer their only hope of survival. And in the depths of space, the void entities continued to gather, preparing to finish what they had started 50,000 years ago. Legacy of the Stars. The training chamber aboard Gateway Station Alpha hummed with energy as Sarah Chen watched another group of human volunteers interface with the ancient systems. 3 weeks had passed since the Council Summit, and time was running out. "Neural synchronization at 87%, announced the facility's eye. Subject shows natural aptitude for quantum interface protocols. The volunteer, a young woman named Maya Rodriguez, sat in one of the facility's control chairs, her eyes closed in concentration as holographic displays swirled around her. Like many of the volunteers, she had no prior military or scientific training. She had been a teacher on one of Earth's orbital colonies. "These results are unprecedented," muttered Dr. Cole, the Council's chief xenotechnologist. The avian scientist had been among the first to volunteer his expertise after the summit. "The neural interfaces are accepting human operators at rates far beyond theoretical limits." Sarah nodded, reviewing the data. "It's not just acceptance, they're improving the systems. Each new operator seems to unlock more of the facility's capabilities. It's like we're remembering rather than learning." The station shuddered slightly as another void breach was detected and contained. The defensive network was growing stronger as more facilities came online, but the void entities were adapting, probing for weaknesses. "Dr. Chen," Captain Voss's voice came over the comm. "We need you in the command center. The Council's evacuation fleet has detected something." Sarah found the command center buzzing with activity. Representatives from a dozen species worked alongside human operators, coordinating the massive effort to evacuate vulnerable systems in the void entity's path. "Show me," she ordered, stepping up to the main tactical display. The hologram shifted to show a sector near the galaxy's core. A massive void tear was forming, larger than any they'd seen before. But something was different about this one. "The energy signature," Sarah breathed, recognizing the pattern. "It matches the records from 50,000 years ago. This is it, the main invasion force." The void tear expanded, and through it came horrors that defied comprehension. Entities that seemed to be made of living darkness poured through the breach, their very presence causing reality to warp and buckle. "Multiple Council worlds going dark," reported a sensor operator. "The entities are moving faster than we predicted. Time to arrival at major population centers. 6 hours. Sarah's mind raced. The defensive network wasn't ready. They had activated less than half of the facilities, and many of their crews were still in training. But as she watched the void entities advance, something clicked in her mind, a pattern in their movement. "They're not random," she said suddenly. "Look at their formation. They're following the same attack pattern they used 50,000 years ago." She rushed to one of the neural interface chairs, strapping herself in. The ancient systems responded instantly to her presence, flooding her consciousness with tactical data. "Our ancestors fought this battle before," she continued, her fingers dancing over the controls as memories that weren't quite her own guided her actions. "They lost, but they recorded everything. The void entity's tactics, their vulnerabilities." The holographic display shifted, overlaying the current battle with records from the ancient conflict. The patterns were identical. "They're not just similar," Captain Voss realized. "They're exactly the same. The void entities aren't adapting. They're repeating." Sarah's eyes snapped open as understanding dawned. "Because they don't need to adapt. Their strategy worked perfectly last time, but that's their weakness. Our ancestors couldn't stop them, but they made sure we would know exactly how they attack." She opened a channel to all active facilities. "All stations, begin Emergency Protocol Omega. Upload tactical data from archive file AE 789. These aren't just historical records. They're a battle plan. Our ancestors spent their last moments recording exactly how to fight these things." Across the galaxy, the activated facilities began coordinating their responses. The quantum phase disruptors adjusted their frequencies based on the ancient data, targeting specific weaknesses in the void entity's formation. "Council fleet detecting massive power surge from human facilities," announced one of the alien operators. "Energy signatures exceeding all known safety parameters." "Let it build," Sarah ordered, feeling the ancient technology singing through her neural connection. "Our ancestors designed these weapons to operate at levels far beyond what the Council considers safe. That's why the void entities didn't expect them the first time." The Void Invasion Force approached the first line of activated facilities. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath as ancient weapons powered up to their true capacity for the first time in 50,000 years. All facilities, Sarah commanded, feeling the combined power of the network flowing through her neural interface. Fire on my mark. The void entities surged forward, their dark forms rippling with impossible energies. But this time, humanity was ready. This time, they knew exactly what they were facing. Fire. The galaxy lit up as dozens of quantum phase disruptors fired in perfect synchronization. The void entities recoiled as weapons specifically designed to counter their physics-defying abilities tore into their ranks. For the first time, the darkness began to retreat. But even as the first counterattack succeeded, Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The void entities would regroup, adapt, try new strategies. The difference was that this time, humanity wasn't facing them alone. As if to emphasize this point, a fleet of Council warships dropped out of hyperspace, taking up defensive positions alongside the human facilities. Whatever doubts the galactic community had harbored about humanity's claims were gone. Now they faced the darkness together, guided by the legacy of those who had faced it before. The true test was about to begin. Children of the Dawn. The command center of Gateway Station Alpha had become the central hub of galactic resistance as the Void War entered its third day. Sarah Chen hadn't left her neural interface chair since the main invasion began, her mind linked directly to the ancient facilities systems as she coordinated humanity's response. Void entities have breached the outer defense line in Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Park. They've adapted to our initial countermeasures. Sarah opened her eyes, the neural interface translating tactical data directly into her consciousness. The void entities were learning, changing their strategies for the first time in 50,000 years. Their perfect formation had dissolved into chaos as they sought new ways to counter the ancient weapons. They're desperate, she realized, watching their erratic movements. They've never had to adapt before. Their original strategy always worked perfectly, until now. Captain Voss studied the tactical display, where red markers showed void tiers spreading across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. They're still advancing. We've slowed them down, but we haven't stopped them. Dr. Chen, called Dr. Cole, his feathers ruffled with excitement. We've finished analyzing the latest data from the neural interfaces. There's something you need to see. The avian scientist brought up a new display showing brainwave patterns from human operators across the defensive network. The neural synchronization rates aren't just holding steady, they're increasing. Each hour connected to the ancient systems makes the operators more efficient, more intuitive in their responses. It's not just training, Sarah said, understanding dawning. The interfaces aren't teaching us to use the technology. They're helping us remember. She brought up archived data from 50,000 years ago. Our ancestors didn't just leave us their weapons and knowledge. They encoded it into our DNA, buried so deep even they forgot it was there. Every human has the potential to operate these systems because we were engineered to do exactly that. Incoming transmission from the Council fleet, announced one of the communication officers. High Counselor Vexnar requests immediate conference. The counselor's hologram appeared, his scaled features tight with concern. Dr. Chen, the void entities have changed course. All invasion forces are converging on a single target, Gateway Station Alpha. Sarah's fingers flew over the neural interface controls, analyzing the tactical data. The void entities had abandoned their methodical advance, throwing everything into a single massive assault on humanity's command center. They finally realized we're different from our ancestors, she said. They're trying to cut off the head of the resistance before we can unlock our full potential. Can we hold them? Captain Voss asked. Sarah's mind raced through combat scenarios, drawing on both ancient tactical data and modern strategic analysis. Not alone. But we don't have to. She opened a channel to all Council ships and human facilities. All forces, this is Dr. Sarah Chen. The void entities are mounting their final assault. They think that by destroying this station, They can break us. They think we'll fall like our ancestors did." She paused, feeling the combined strength of humanity's legacy flowing through her neural connection. But our ancestors didn't fail. Everything they built, everything they encoded into our very beings, was for this moment. They knew we would face this challenge, and they made sure we would be ready. The tactical display lit up as council ships began moving into formation alongside the human facilities. Species that had looked down on humanity just weeks ago now stood ready to fight and die beside them. "The void entities have never faced a unified galaxy," Sarah continued. "They've never had to fight against the combined strength of all sapient life. Today, we show them why our ancestors chose to preserve life rather than win a single battle. Today, we prove that their faith in us was justified." The void entities struck like a tidal wave of unreality, their massive forms distorting space itself as they converged on Gateway Station Alpha. But they found no easy target. The defensive network responded with perfect coordination, every human operator moving with the inherited knowledge of 50,000 years of preparation. Council ships struck from carefully calculated positions, their conventional weapons supplementing the ancient quantum phase disruptors in ways the void entities had never encountered. Reality itself seemed to shake as the battle reached its peak. The void entities' assault began to falter as they faced strategies they couldn't predict, weapons that could harm them, and a unity they had never encountered in all their eons of destruction. "Main void breach destabilizing," reported Lieutenant Park. "The invasion force is losing coherence." Sarah felt it through her neural interface, the moment when the tide truly turned. The void entities had never known defeat, had never faced an enemy that could truly fight back. As their perfect formations crumbled, their very nature began to work against them. "They're breaking," she announced, watching as the invasion force began to fragment. "Without their predetermined strategies, they can't maintain their presence in our reality." The defensive network pressed its advantage, quantum phase disruptors firing in precise sequences that forced the void entities back through their own tiers in space. Throughout the galaxy, the dark invaders began to retreat, their confidence shattered by humanity's impossible resistance. As the last void entity vanished back into the nothingness between realities, a cheer went up from every ship and station in the combined fleet. Humanity had faced its ancient enemy and emerged victorious, not through power alone, but through the unity their ancestors had sacrificed everything to protect. In the aftermath, as the Council fleet began coordinating cleanup operations, Sarah finally disconnected from her neural interface. She felt different, changed by her connection to humanity's ancient legacy. But as she looked around the command center, seeing humans and aliens working side by side, she knew that everything had changed. "What now?" Captain Voss asked, helping her stand on shaky legs. "The void entities might return." Sarah smiled, thinking of all the knowledge still waiting to be unlocked in the ancient facilities. "Now we do what our ancestors hoped we would. We learn, we grow, we build something new, not just for humanity, but for all life in the galaxy." She looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, in the spaces between realities, the void entities were learning a lesson 50,000 years in the making. Humanity had not only survived, they had fulfilled their ancestors' greatest hope, becoming protectors rather than just survivors. The legacy of the stars belonged to everyone now, and together they would make sure it lasted for 50,000 years more.